right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening. This is being recorded. We'll put it on the Shul's Zoom website. Judith, hello. I heard you've been laid down with a lurgy. Wish you better. Right. Okay. So we'll pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks seems like a enormous time ago. So just to recap, talking about the height of a sukkah, the very first argument in the first Mishnah. Right. It might be better if you mute. On mute. If you mute yourselves, and then I think I can mute you. But if you need to say anything, you just need to stick your hand up. Chaim, you show Emma how to put your hand up if you need to say something. So it's only because.
Yeah, we are on mute now, so it's okay.
You are on mute. Okay, good. Well done. Okay, right.
You couldn't be on mute, can you, Chaim? If we could hear you, you couldn't be on mute.
But you can unmute yourself.
I undid it for 1 second, Judith. I'm going back to be mute now.
I don't know how you put your hand up. How do you put your hand up?
Okay, so if you go to the bottom.
Yeah. Right.
You go to
Reaction.
So if you go to participants at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it gives you the opportunity to put your hand up. There's a kind of a hissing in the background because someone's not muted. It's going to make it quite annoying. Okay, right. So if you remember, there is an argument between the rabbis. Do you all have a copy of the Gemara in front of you? Yeah? Okay, good. So there's an argument between the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda about the maximum height of a sukkah. The rabbis say that the sukkah can be 20 amas and no more. The Rabbi Yehuda says it can be higher than that. And then there are three opinions as to what the source of that is, either from Rabbah, to basically on a posuk, and then there was Rabbi Zera about the sukkah giving some kind of shade, and Rava about the concept that the sukkah should be a temporary dwelling place. Right. So we then went into a further set of analysis about what the limitations of the argument between the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda was. And those three first, the first opinion was that of Rabbi Yoshia, who said that the argument was only when the walls don't reach all the way to the schach. But if the walls reach all the way to the schach, even higher than 20 amas would be kosher, even in the opinion of the rabbis. Then there was a second, and then they said, who does that go like? That obviously goes like Rabbah, who was talking about being able to see, making sure you could see the schach. And if the walls go all the way up, you'll be able to see the schach. And then the next one was about whether the argument was only on a sukkah that was less than 4 by 4 amas. That was the footprint of the sukkah. And this was Rav Huna. And that would seemingly go like Rav Zera. And then the third one was Rav Chanan, who was saying that the machloket is even if it's smaller than that. And the Gemara could say that went like nobody of the first three opinions. Then there was a discussion about whether there was an argument between Rab Hanan and Rab Zera just about the size of the sukkah, about whether the size should be 4x4 or should be the size to take the majority of your body and your head and your table. Right, and that brings us up to the story of Hilni Hamalka, Queen Hilni. Now, I know we did it last time, but I'm going to pick it up from about 2/3 of the way down Bet Omid Bet. That is B2 Metave. So are you all, I'll just unmute you, make sure you're all, can you, Emma, have you got it?
Sorry, Lionel. No, where exactly it is, I'll find it for her.
Okay, so Metave. Okay, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 lines up from the bottom. 21 lines up from the bottom about.
Page.
Bet Omid Bet.
Bet Amud Bet. Okay.
Bet Amud Bet, not Daf.
So, Michael, do you have it in the? What page is it in the? Are you in the Koran, Judith, or are you in the Art Scroll?
No, the Koran.
Okay. So in the Koran.
Chaim's in the Koran as well, aren't you? Chaim and Emma,
Yeah,
you're
we
in
are,
the Koran.
yes, we are on
Can see that.
Koran.
Great. Well, we have 4 people in the shir, and we're using 4 different Gemaras. That's perfect logistics.
No, we're not using 3. We've got Chaim and Emma have got Koran. What page? What English page number is it? I'm going from the
4. As the English, I don't know. We look at the Hebrew.
Oh, okay.
It's 2B3 if you've got Art Scroll, but I don't know where it is in Koran.
okay.
Okay.
What am I looking for in the English?
Find it in the English.
Metave, it'll probably be something like they asked a question. Sorry, I should have made sure I had a Koran here as well.
I think
I'm trying to find the English. The nuisance is not on the same page.
Oh, it's okay. I'll listen to you.
If you hold it up, I might be able to see. So you've gone a bit too far. You're on Daf Gimel, so just go back a bit.
Okay. Because there's that page where the dime.
Yeah, okay. So the second, just go to the right a bit. It'll be the story of Hilni Malka.
Sorry.
Can't quite see.
Let me see.
I think pretty sure it's going to be one of those paragraphs down on the right side of your Gemara there.
Helene's sons. They're talking about Helene's sons?
Yeah, that's right. It's the beginning of that story.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Metave. So they asked a question. So Sukkah Shehi Gavah Lamala Me'esrim Amot. So this is a brighter which repeats the argument that we had in our Mishnah. A sukkah which is higher than 20 amot. Pasula, it is invalid. Rabbi Yehuda Machshir, but Rabbi Yehuda says that it's kosher. That is a repeat of our Mishnah. At arba'im b'chamishim amot, even to 40 or 50 amot, meaning it can be as high as you like. Right. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now this is the continuation of, hello Ruth.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. Welcome to the show. Do you have a Gemara with you?
I don't, but can I just listen?
Of course you can just listen. It is possible to download the Art Scroll, I believe.
I wasn't very organized, but let me try.
Okay, anyway. Or you could follow on Safaria, which is also free. You don't have to download it. You can just access it on a bet of sukkah. Omer Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said, "Maaseh behilni hamalka." There was a happening or a story with Queen Helene. Are you with me, Judith? Now you found it.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, Belud. This happened in Lod. So we went through the background of Helene, a proselyte queen who was became highly regarded and was religious. Shahaita sukkata gavama esrim amma. Her sukkah was higher than 20 amas. And the rabbis of Lod went in and out, and they didn't say anything to her. So we have a woman, a Jewish woman, who had a sukkah that was higher than 20 amas, and the rabbis approved of it. So Rabbi Yehuda is bringing this story as a proof that he is right, that if it's higher than 20 amas, there's no invalidity. It's perfectly okay. Seems like a good proof. So the rabbis counted, this is all still part of the Braita, the rabbis counted to Rabbi Yehuda, Misham Ra'aya. They asked him, is this a proof? Isha hayata b'tura min hasukkah. She was a woman, clearly, and she is not liable to the mitzvah of sukkah. In other words, the positive commandment in sitting in a sukkah is a mitzvah aseh sha'azaman grama, which means it is a positive commandment that is bound by time. And as we learned in the second chapter of Kiddushin, that women, although they are allowed to keep the mitzvah of that are bound by time, in fact, most of them have taken it on them as an obligation. But strictly speaking, they don't have to keep these mitzvot. And the question of whether they could say a bracha on it is not something I can give a shir about, but I'm sure there is a shir to give on that. Whether a woman can say Asher gid shalom b'mitzvotav etzivanu lishmoa kol shofar, if you're blowing the shofar or something like that. So the rabbi is saying there's no proof. The rabbis, of course, didn't object. The contemporary rabbis of Lod did not object to her because she was sitting in an apostle sukkah. She didn't need to sit in a kosher sukkah. Amar lahen. So Rabbi Yehuda said to the rabbis, the people that are arguing with him, not the rabbis of Lod, Amar lahen. Sorry.
She may not have needed to sit. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
She may not have needed to sit in a kosher sukkah, but surely these rabbis did need to sit in a kosher sukkah. So right, didn't they? Good
point. So we don't know whether they were actually just passing through. They might have gone there just to kind of say hello and good Yom Tov to her, but not sat down, eaten in the sukkah or anything like that. But had they actually eaten in the sukkah or spent some time there, learned in the sukkah or something like that, then that your proof would have been a good proof. But it seems like because Rabbi Yehuda did not use them, he used Queen Helene, that he couldn't reliably know that they actually dwelt in that sukkah.
Right. Thanks.
But it's a good question. Right. So Amar lahen, so he said to the rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda said to the rabbis, sorry, there are two sets of rabbis here. The rabbis that were with Queen Helene and the rabbis who are arguing with Rabbi Yehuda 150 years later. So we're talking about the arguing rabbis. Amar lahen, Rabbi Yehuda said to them, V'alo shiva banim havula. She had 7 sons. And also, furthermore, it's well known that all her actions were always done in accordance with the rabbi's rulings. In other words, she was very meticulous about what she did, and she kept even rabbinic ordinances. End of the Braita. That seems to be the proof from Rabbi Yehuda or the putative proof from Rabbi Yehuda to the rabbis that he is right. That there is a law that even if it's higher than 20 amot, it's kosher. So the Gemara is dealing with the wording of the Breita first of all, before we get into the actual proof. So the first thing is the Gemara asks, why did the Breita need to add in this explanation? Furthermore, all her activities were only done in accordance with the rabbinic ordinances. What's that got to do with the price of cheese? So this is the explanation of what Rabbi Yehuda was saying. If you're going to tell me that her children, her sons, were young sons, in other words, they were toddlers. And toddlers are actually not obliged to sit in a sukkah, like they're not obliged to do any of the mitzvot. Given the Shiva Havu, since there were 7 and none of them were twins, it's impossible from 7 that one of them was not of an age that did not need his mother. And he, in other words, had been weaned and left the kindergarten, whatever you want to call it in modern parlance. It reached the age where this child was slightly grown up, not reached bar mitzvah, because it's perfectly feasible that even the 7 sons, none of them had reached bar mitzvah, but it reached the age where they understood a little bit. And there is a rabbinic ordinance, a rabbinic command, that once you have a child who's reached the age where they no longer need their mother, then the rabbis dictate that that child needs to sit in a kosher sukkah. But do you want to tell me that she did not pay any attention to the rabbi? So Shema, that's why the Brisa comes to tell us, she was well known for keeping in mind even the rabbinic commands. So it's a chain of proof. She had 7 sons. That means that at least the eldest had reached the age of chinuch, of the obligation of being educated. And if he'd reached that age, there was a rabbinic command that he would sit in a kosher sukkah. This sukkah was greater than 20 amas, therefore it was a kosher sukkah, because the Chachamim of Lud, the rabbis of Lod who came to visit her, didn't tell her off and say, do you know what? Your son shouldn't be sitting in this sukkah. That's the proof. Okay. So now, how does that help us elucidate the nature of the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim? Bishloma. So this seems to go in accordance. If the argument, like according to Rabbi Yoshia, that is only when the walls don't reach the schach. If you remember, we talked about a way that the schach is on poles or somehow scaffolded above the walls. In that situation, there is an argument that the rabbis would hold that it is not kosher. Rabbi Yehuda would hold that it is kosher. If that was the nature of Queen Helene's sukkah, that is a proof. That is worth Rabbi Yehuda bringing as a proof. Why? That is exactly the way a royal queen would have her sukkah. Why? Mishum, over the page now. So we're now at the top of Gimel Amud Aleph, the first line of Gimel Amud Aleph. Mishum Avira, because of air. In other words, it was kind of a primitive air conditioning. You would build a sukkah, but you would, because you're wealthy, because you're the queen, you're able to somehow make gaps between the top of your walls and the schach. That would be a great sukkah. But the schach, it's a royal sukkah, but the schach is very high. It's higher than 20 amas. So Rabbi Yehuda is proving that this sukkah is kosher for the fact that the rabbis of Lod went to visit her and the children were there and they didn't say anything. And the rabbis of our Mishnah who argue with Rabbi Yehuda would have said that this is a non-kosher sukkah. So this seems to be a proof, first of all, for Rabbi Yehuda and also for Rabbi Yoshia, who says that the argument is only when the sukkah goes where there is a gap between the top of the walls and the schach. But if the walls go all the way up to the schach, there's no argument. Even the rabbis would say that it's kosher. Ella, but is that okay so far? So we have proved the interpretation of the argument by Rabbi Yehuda's bringing this proof, because this proof would be more pertinent or only pertinent to a royal sukkah where there is a gap between the top of the walls and the schach. But the other two interpretations of the argument that argue about whether the sukkah is small, but if the sukkah is big, either greater than 7 by 7 handbreadths or 4 by 4 cubits, depending, we're talking about Rabbi Huda, Rav Huda, Rav Hanan, that can't be there. Why would Rabbi Yehuda bring this story as a proof? There's absolutely no way that Queen Helene would be sitting in a sukkah that's only 4 by 4 amas, 4 cubits, about 2 feet by 2 feet. Of course, it would be much bigger than that. And so why would Rabbi Yehuda bring this as a proof to show that he is correct? And that's where we got up to last 2 weeks ago. Okay. Right. So Amar Rabba Bar Rav Ada. So third line down. Everyone still with me? Emma, are you with me? I'll just unmute you. Are you with me?
She needs to unmute, I think.
Emma, say something. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Good, excellent, well done. Okay.
Perhaps it was on stupid mute still. Unmuted.
I only put everyone on mute just because there was a background noise.
Don't
So
worry,
you can unmute yourself whenever you want, or you can put your hand up and you can.
I'm unmuted and I'm with you.
Okay, that's fantastic.
I'm
Ruth,
not on video because I have no makeup on. So today I stay home the whole day, so I have no makeup on, so I'm not letting you see me.
Ruth, I also have no makeup on. I just wanted to do that.
Well.
Okay, third line. Ruth, did you manage to get the Gemara on Safaria?
Yes, I've got it.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, I've got
Okay,
it.
so I hope you've managed to catch up with the whole inyan. Omar Rabba Bar Rav Ada. So Rabba Bar Rav Ada says, "Lo nitzlacha ela lesukkah ha'asuya kitoniot." No, this is actually a feasible argument even for a royal sukkah, because the royal sukkah could have been made in kitoniot, which means that it was made with little small sukkahs around. There was a big sukkah and little sukkahs as well. It kind of like little mini rooms of it. So there'll be a room for her and a room for all her servants, and each of these would be small enough to be included in the argument of Rav Hanan or Rav Huna.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So that would be a way that Rabbi Yehuda would have brought this story to prove his point, even according to the interpretation of the two rabbis who interpreted the argument about a small sukkah. But that doesn't seem to be quite, okay. But but would that be the way, even if it was one of these big sukkahs made up of lots of little sukkahs, would the queen actually be sitting in a small sukkah? No, she wouldn't. She would have had people sitting with her children, her advisors, etc., etc. Ravashi lo nitzcha ela lekitaniot sheba. Okay. It's only the Ravashi says we only need this argument for the small sukkahs that were in the big sukkah. So there was a big sukkah where everyone else was sitting. That she was sitting. Well, there seems to be an argument now. We can imagine two different scenarios here. So there's a big sukkah with little sukkahs around. Rabbanan Savrei, so the rabbis hold, Baneha b'sukkah ma'alya havu yasvei v'iyu yatva b'kitoniot mishum tzinuta. Right. So there's a big main sukkah. That's where her children were sitting, and there were little small sukkahs, and that's where she was sitting. So the big sukkah was where the children were sitting, so there was not a problem for that. She was sitting in the small sukkah because of tzniut, because of modesty. And no problem about that, because even though the small sukkah is pasul, she's a woman, so it didn't matter. That's why they didn't say it. And because of that scenario, they didn't say anything to her. Rabbi Yehuda says, Baneha gaba havu yatvei. No, she was sitting in the small sukkah, but her children were sitting with her. And even so, they didn't say anything to her, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that even in a small sukkah, according to these two interpretations of the argument, a small sukkah is still kosher when it's higher than 20 amas. So with a stretch of the imagination and squeezing 7 children into a very small sukkah with her, it is possible to establish this story, even according to the other interpretations of the argument between the rabbis and Rabbi Yehuda. That is the end of the episode of Helni Amalka and the sukkah, possibly the sukkah with lots of small sukkahs around. Okay, right. Okay, so far.
Okay.
Okay, good. Because now we're going to leave this aspect of the height of the sukkah, and we're going to go on to something slightly different. Because we have been talking about the size, the footprint of the sukkah. Now we're going to deal with that a little bit. Now, but for that, we're actually fast forwarding a little bit, because there is the Mishnah that talks about this is many pages on. We'll come to it in a few years' time. But because we've been talking about it now, the Gemara seems to go out on a tangent and develop that idea a bit more. So, spoiler alert, but I'll tell you what the Mishnah says. In fact, okay, if you have it. Right. So if you want to read actually in the Mishnah, you can move forward to 28a, but you don't have to. I'll read it to you. This is a Mishnah in the second chapter. Mi shahaya rosho v'ruba b'sukkah v'shulchano b'toch habayit. Is someone whose head and the majority of his body was in the sukkah, but his table was in the house. So the sukkah was on a balcony. The door was open to the balcony. The table was in the house, and the man was sitting on the balcony in the sukkah. So the majority, his head and the majority of his body was in the sukkah, but his table was in the house, and that's the way he was eating. Beis Shammai was posted. Beis Shammai invalidate this, or Beis Hillel machshirin, and Beis Hillel say this is kosher. That's all we need to know. That is the argument about the size of a sukkah between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. On that, our Gemara develops. So we're back in the Gemara, we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines down on Gimel Amud Aleph on 3a. 3 words from the end of the line. Amar Rav Shmuel. You all with me?
Yes.
Good. Ruth?
No, Rabbi, because I'm on the Sefaria, so it's a bit different.
It is a bit different. Let me see if I can.
Maybe between 2 cities.
No, you've gone down too far.
I'll go up. Is it Rabbi Yehuda?
No,
So it's quite near the beginning of 3a.
What's the beginning of the sentence in English?
Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzhak said the halakha is one.
Nachman, not Nachman. Shmuel. Shmuel Bennett, I've got him. Yitzchak said, yeah.
Okay, you got it? Amar Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak. So if you remember, we had an argument about the argument. 2 of the opinions were that the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis was based on only a small sukkah, either one that was 4 by 4 or one that was 7 by 7 handbreadths. So Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak says halacha, the din is, the halacha is tzricha, the sukkah needs shetahei machazeket rosho v'rubo v'shulchano. It needs to hold his head, the majority of his body, and his table. Amalei Rabbi Abba. So Rabbi Abba says to him, "Come on, who are you actually holding like? Beit Shammai? Are you holding like Beit Shammai?" Now, of course, that is a strong question, because by the time we get round to Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak, it's been a well-established rule that when there's an argument between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, the yeshiva of Hillel and the yeshiva of Shammai, which was early Tanaitic, so hundreds of years earlier, the halacha is nearly always like Beit Hillel, not like Beit Shammai. So to kind of accuse or to confront an opinion which is in accordance with Beit Shammai is a very strong question. Amalei. So he said to him, Elakaman, who should I paskin like? Because this is the way that I have paskined. So just to repeat, the Beit Shammai hold that you need your head, the body, and your table. And Beit Hillel hold that the area of a sukkah is only your head and your body, and not the table, based on the Mishnah that we read just before. So he says, yeah, that's the way I hold. There is another way of interpreting this conversation between Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak and Rabbi Abba. Amar Rabbi Abba, the Amalach Mani. Who is it that you paskened like? Amalei Bet Shammai, V'lo tazuz mina. I paskened like Bet Shammai, and I'm not going to move from it. Mat Givla Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman by Yitzchak asked, Mimad de Beit Shammai Beit Hillel b'sukkah ketana peligei. How do you know that argument that we were talking about between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel is actually arguing about the size of the sukkah? So remember, we read that Mishnah in 28a. It's talking about a man who's sitting in the sukkah, and in his table is going into the house, and there is a debate between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel whether it is kosher or not, depending on how much of him and his table is in the sukkah. The simple way of explaining that argument is that it is about the size of the sukkah. Is the sukkah big enough to hold him, meaning his head, the majority of his body, and a bit of his table? Beit Shammai say, yes, it needs to hold a bit of his table. Beit Hillel say, no, it doesn't need to hold a bit of his table. It just needs to hold him and his body. But Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak gives another interpretation, a different way of looking at that argument. So he says, how do you know? Mimai, the Beit Shammai Beit Hillel, b'sukkah ketana b'ligay. How do you know that they are talking about the size of the sukkah? Dilma, b'sukkah gedolah b'ligay. Maybe there is actually no problem here. They're talking about a big enough sukkah. That's not the issue. Kagon, the Yasiv, Apuma, the Metallalata, the Shulchan b'toch habayit. So maybe the thing is, he's actually sitting at the entrance of the sukkah. His table goes into the house. The Beit Shammai Shomrei, so Beit Shammai hold, Gazrinan Shema Yimashech Acha Shulchano. So this is not a question of the size of the sukkah. This is a question of a gezerah, a question of a decree. Beit Shammai hold, because his table, which is going into the sukkah a little bit, but the majority of his table goes away from him into the house. Maybe we're worried that what he's going to do, he's going to lean forward over his table, he's going to eat his meal and out of the sukkah in the house. It's a kosher sukkah, but we're worried about his behavior. Beit Hillel say, no, we're not going to be worried about that, and it is a valid way of having your sukkah. So this would reinterpret the argument, not to do with what is the size of the sukkah, but the way you are allowed to sit in the sukkah. Beit Shammai are strict, as is their way. And they say, no, we don't want someone to do that in case he'll lean forward. Beit Hillel are more relaxed, says we're not bothered. We think that the man is going to be conscious of the fact that he's in the sukkah, and he will stay in the sukkah, and he won't lean forward into his house. V'deikanami, and this seems to be the correct interpretation. This seems to be the likely way of interpreting this argument. Diktani, because the Mishnah actually, we look at the text of the Mishnah. This is how it goes. Mi shehaya rosho v'rubo b'sukkah v'shulchan b'toch habayit. Someone, his head and the majority of his body was in the sukkah. His table was in the house. Beit Shammai postin or Beit Hillel machshirin. Beit Shammai make it pasul. Beit Hillel make it make it kosher. Vim ita. And if you were talking where we're talking about the size of the sukkah, then really it should say mechazeket ve'ena mechazeket liboelei. We should have been using the words someone whose sukkah holds his body, his head, and his shulchan. This is a different way of presenting the scenario. This is someone who's sitting in his sukkah, and his table goes into the house, which seems to be an indication the argument is about the verb, about the action, rather than about the noun, about the size. So we are able to kind of so we are able to take the heat off Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, because he can hold that without necessarily paskening like Beis Shammai. Okay. Uva sukkah, right. Now, the Gemara there goes on to question this. Uva sukkah katana lo pelige, and do so. Having established that the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is nothing to do with the size of the sukkah, but to do with the behavior of the person sitting in the sukkah, the Gemara now questions that. Is it true that they don't argue about the size of the sukkah? But we've got another source that brings a clear argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about the size of the sukkah. V'hatanya, and we're in the brighter. Machazeket. Look at the word there, it holds Rosho v'rubo v'shulchano k'sheira. If it holds his head and his body and his table, it's kosher. Rebbe Omer ad shebo arba amos al arba amos. So Rebbe says no, it needs to be much bigger than that. So his head, his body, and his shulchan, we would say, is probably 7 handbreadths by 7 handbreadths. Rebbe says, no, it needs to be 4 cubits by 4 cubits. Matanya idach, and we learned another brighter, another source. Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, Kol sukkah she'ein ba'arba amat al arba amat v'sula. Any sukkah which does not have 4 by 4 is invalid. And the rabbis say, even if it holds his head and his body, it's kosher. So if you look at those two brightot, if you look carefully the last few lines, we have an argument between two similar arguments, except there's a difference between them. Can you see the difference? So the rabbi, if you look at the first, so let's go back 3 or 4 lines. V'hatanya, machazeket rosho v'rubo v'shulchano k'sheira. Opinion 1 in the first brisa. It needs to hold his head, his body, and his table. That if it has that, it's kosher. Rebbe says it needs to be 4 by 4 amot. Another brighter, another similar brighter. This time the citations are reversed. Rebbe Omer Kol sukkah she'ein bo arba amat arba amat. He's the same. Rebbe says that you need 4 by 4. If it's less than that, it's possible. But Chachamim Omrim, and the rabbis say, which is equivalent to the unquoted, the uncited, the anonymous opinion in the first brighter. Afilu ein mechazek ele rosh v'rubo. Only if it holds his head and his body, kashera. So we can see that the two opinions that are arguing with Rebbe, the first opinion includes the table. The second opinion does not include the table. So it seems like there are 2 different opinions of the rabbis arguing with Rebbe. Kashan ahadadi, they contradict each other. So the way to resolve that is there are 2 brightot arguing with Rebbe, one citing the opinion of Beit Hillel, which is the second one, and one citing the opinion of Beit Shammai, which is the first one. Except the names of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel don't find their way into the brighter. They are either anonymous or just this kind of quasi-anonymous with the Chachamim Omrim. So to say that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai don't argue about the size of the sukkah is wrong. We seem to have 2 good sources to say that Beit Shammai hold it needs to be the head, the body, and his table, and Beit Hillel say no, it only needs to be his head and his body. Is that okay? Do you understand that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Good. I can't see you, Ruth. Are you with me?
I'm right here.
You're right. You're right there. Okay. Good. Okay, so Amar Mazutra. So
Who was
sorry, Amar Mazutra. So Mazutra said Dekanami.
Lionel? Sorry, who's Marzutra?
So okay, so Mazutra is a much later. So this is a much later layer coming in here now. So we've established from early on that there is an argument between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, and that is to do with the size of the sukkah. Remember, originally we wanted to suggest that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai were not arguing about the size of the sukkah. They were only arguing about whether we can rely on someone not leaning into the house if he was sitting on the balcony. But we've now kind of found a good source to see that there is a difference between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, actually on the size of the sukkah. In other words, it becomes noun rather than verb. And Mazutra is kind of, if you like, on that, the icing of the cake, matnitin nami deka midiktani. So he's looking again at the language of the Mishnah that we have on 28a. Also implies that this is the source of the argument. Midikatani, because we learn in the Mishnah, Beit Shammai poslin or Beit Hillel machshirin. Because it says there, Beit Shammai makes it pasul.
And Beit Hillel kosher.
Yeah. Which the word pasul, invalid, is not normally applied to a verb. That's applied to a noun. Is it your tefillin is pasul? The Sefer Torah is pasul. You wouldn't say you wouldn't say you'd say the shofar is pasul, but you wouldn't say the way he blew was pasul. Well, you might do, but you would say that he hadn't been yotzer. So Beit Hillel b'Shirin v'mita Beit Shammai lo yatza Beit Hillel yatza. In fact, the Gemara even agrees with me. And if there was a problem with his verb, with his action, in other words, Beit Shammai wanted to stop him sitting in that sukkah as a gezerah, they would have said lo yatza. He hasn't fulfilled his duty, rather than that it's pasul. Pasul implies there's something wrong with the sukkah. So having implied that the Mishnah on 28a seemed to be talking about a gezerah, on second look, the language seems to support the Mishnah on 28a as a Mishnah about the size and the actual validity of the sukkah itself, not the way the man is sitting in the sukkah. The Elakashia, Mishahaya. Okay, but we're going back to what we said before, but you've got the difficulty. The implication, as we said before, when the Mishnah on 28a sets the scene, it says Mishahaya. This man was sitting. It should have just said, it should have set the scene and said, a sukkah which holds his rosh over rub over the shulchano, and made that the argument. If the argument is about the noun, about the sukkah, you shouldn't be introducing it with a mishahaya, which is about the verb. The man who was sitting like this. It seems to be a kind of a mixed messages, whether we're talking about the way someone's sitting in the sukkah or the sukkah itself. Mishahaya.
I mean, this actually appears to be a fairly fundamental, linguistic use of the word posel. So, I mean, it's kind of surprising that Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, who presumably could be the brother or something of Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak, who originally took up the point. Why would Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak actually even suggest then that the argument of the brisa is about the conduct of the man rather than about the size of the sukkah, when the word posel is instead of yotzer? I mean, these are fundamental linguistic aspects of the way Mishnais and Brisas are actually written, isn't it? It seems that the Gemara has explored this point a little bit too fully.
Too fully?
Yeah, I mean, giving more credibility to Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak's challenge that that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are actually, you know, that their discussion is about the conduct of the man rather than about the size of the sukkah.
Well, maybe Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak was uncomfortable that Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak seemed to be paskening like Beit Shammai.
Beis Shammai. I see.
He says quite. It's an unusual phrase in the Gemara. The halacha tzricha shnei machzek rosh v'shulchano. Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak is not being ambiguous there. Remember, the Gemara is not normally a halachic book, but we are quoting a Tana, an Amora, who's saying the halacha is it needs to hold his head, his body, or the majority of his body, and his table. That is like like Beit Shammai. That's quite a statement. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak seems to be kind of trying to support him by saying, well, it's not really like Beit Shammai, because Beit Shammai are really only concerned about someone who might lean into the house. That it's not about the size of the house. And I can support this because the Mishnah doesn't use the word machazeket. It uses the word mishahaya. It sets the scene in a different way. And you're quite right, Michael. Then it comes back the other way, and it implies that it is talking about the size of the house because it talks about posel and not posel. So but in this long sugya, in this long topic of discussion, which is about a Mishnah that we haven't even got to yet, the Gemara is highlighting or bringing out a strange use of language in that Mishnah, which seems to be implying. It implies two contradictory things and possibly having two different halachic outcomes. And that's now what the Gemara is actually going to ask. But Elakasha, Mishahaya. But we got this kasha about the words Mishahaya. So the Gemara now is going to completely reconstruct the Mishnah, and kind of, in other words, to put in the gaps or the missing pieces of the Mishnah to make more sense. La'olam. So this is the kind of, if you like, the final interpretation of that Mishnah. But in fact, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are arguing on both points. There isn't a single point here. They're arguing on both points. Pelige b'sukkah katana. They are indeed arguing over the size of a sukkah. In other words, Beis Shammai say a sukkah needs to hold his head, his body, and a little bit of his table, whereas Beis Hillel say no, he just needs to hold his head and his body. But it's also talking about a large sukkah, and we are concerned about whether the man might lean out or not. And Beis Hillel are relaxed about that. And the Mishnah is lacking. It does not have enough of the words in it. Some of the words have dropped out or have been changed during the oral transmission. And this is how the Mishnah should read. Someone whose head and his body were in the sukkah, his table was in the house. Beit Shammai say he has not fulfilled his duty. We are worried, according to Beit Shammai, that he might lean into the house. And Beit Hillel say that he has for the duty. V'she'ena machazeket ela kadei rosho v'rubo bilvad. And if it only holds his head and his body alone, Beit Shammai postin and Beit Hillel machshirin. Beit Shammai would say that this is a pasul sukkah. Beit Hillel would say that this is a kosher sukkah. So we have two arguments on the size of a sukkah. Oh, sorry, one argument on the size of the sukkah. Beit Hillel say it is enough if it holds his head and his body. Beit Shammai hold it needs to hold his head, his body, and his table. And there is a second argument in a larger sukkah, which is adjacent to the house, whether you are concerned that when the table is in the house, if Beit Shammai would say that we are concerned he will lead in, like Cheryl, what's her name? Lean in, Cheryl?
No,
Facebook Cheryl, you know who I mean.
Yeah.
I know. Is there any kind of Deoraisa law on the size of the sukkah, or it just says you should dwell in a sukkah for 7 days in the Torah?
Very good question, and a fundamental question on many things. There is a Doraita law that you should sit in the sukkah. The rabbis interpret from many different sources what is a kosher sukkah. So you will fulfill the Doraita based on the parameters that the rabbis have decided on. And there are kind of philosophical questions as are the rabbis only revealing what was already known before, that Moses knew, and that this was passed down, and the rabbis ended up with 2 or 3 different interpretations, but they're all valid. That becomes a very difficult argument. I would refer you to Rabbi Shmuley on this. He actually has given shirim on this before, but it's true of so many different things. Because you blow a shofar. How do we know what it's a positive commandment to blow a shofar? How do we know? How do we know what makes a kosher shofar and what's a apostle shofar? In a week's time we're eating matzah. How do we know how much to eat? It's a positive commandment to eat matzah. The rabbis tell us how much to eat. But that's true nearly all the way. And in fact, it's true of negative commandments as well. There's a negative commandment that not to break Shabbat. How do we know that? The rabbis tell us what constitutes breaking Shabbat, what constitutes things that you can do on Shabbat.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So
okay.
right.
So sorry, before we go on, so I still don't understand why Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchok interpreted the halacha according to Beis Shammai, regardless of whether then it was about the size of the sukkah or about the conduct of the man. Why would he choose that to go that way?
So he is quite clearly, if you go back to the beginning of this whole sugya, Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak is clearly paskening that halacha, he says, halacha, the sukkah, the word is missing. This is not a law about how you should sit in the sukkah. This is a law about how big a sukkah should be. It needs to be big enough to hold your head, the majority of your body, and your table. A table meaning one tefach, one hand breadth.
Right, but
So
why is he sticking to Beis Shammai's view on that? Assuming that, yes, I mean, I understand he thinks this is about the size of the sukkah and not about the conduct of the man, but why is he sticking his neck out and actually ruling his halacha according to Beis Shammai?
No pun intended on sticking his neck out there.
No, indeed not. Right, but why is he doing that?
Because he actually believes that is the halacha, and I believe actually that is the halacha. So this is one of the rare
He go with a stricter view, like they sometimes go with a stricter view. I was wondering whether That was actually the stricter view, and he was going to go with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is the stricter view, obviously, because
Yes, it is. But whether that's why he's going with it, because they'd often go well.
yeah, but when we have hundreds of mishnahs in which there's a debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and we almost invariably paskin halacha. I mean, halacha doesn't get paskin from the Gemara; it gets paskin through the ages, through the Shulchan Aruch, through other achronim, but it invariably seems to follow the rulings of Beis Hillel and not Beis Shammai.
Okay, let me just get the Shulchan Aruch down.
But in this particular case, this is the most unusual exception to that, in which it is following the ruling of Beis Shammai over and above Beis Hillel, and that's a very, very unusual rarity.
Okay, you have raised a very good point. So if you look back up at where Yitzchak, in some of the Gemaras, there'll be a big aleph there next to the word halacha. So we're back up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines down. It might not have it in the Koran version, but it'll certainly have it in the Art Scroll, and it should have it in the Sonsino as well. So that is the Ein Mishpat, which is at the top left-hand corner, and you can see that references to the halachic books. So, have you got that, Michael? The top left-hand corner of your Gemara page. Okay, so if you look down, it says Maimonides, Perik Daled Mehilchas Sukkah, Halacha Aleph, Sev Mixtas Gadol Asin, Mem Gilad. Then the next one is Tur Shulchan Aruch. That's what that stands for there. This is the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so this is the classic work written by Rav Yosef Karo, a compendium of all the relevant halachot of nowadays. Orach Chaim Simon Taf Reish Lamed Dalet. Taf Reish Lamed Dalet. Here we are. That is 600 and chapter 634, paragraph 1. And here we are. Taf Reish. Okay. Sukkah she'ein ba shiva al shiva psula. If it doesn't have 7 by 7 tvachim, it is invalid. So it needs to be 7 by 7 handbreadths. A handbreadth is 4 fingers. You can be as big as you want. Okay, and the Magen Avraham here. So the commentator there, Lefisha derech sur dasan behasiba ben ochlin zukufim yoshim kemono lefichach. Therefore, tzarich, you need zayin al zayin, 7 on 7. Shehei bar rosho v'rubo v'shulchano. You need his head, the majority of his body, and his table.
That's the halacha now.
That's halacha.
So that does actually follow the ruling of Beis Shammai.
But that is the ruling of Beis Shammai. I'm just surprised it doesn't say something in the commentaries, and because it is an unusual ruling, but it is the ruling of Beis Shammai. Correct.
Right. So, no, there is nothing I can see in the commentary about this. I can see the aleph, by the way, by the word halacha in the Gemara, but I can't see any reference to that. Where are you directing me to look for the aleph?
So the aleph, certainly in my version, is up here. You see it up here, yeah?
Yeah.
The top right-hand corner, you see that is it's not really a footnote, it's a side note.
Yeah.
For the Ein Mishpat, and
so just on the outside of the Tosfos.
On the outside margin, at the very top of the page.
Yeah.
The big bold aleph there, And
Yeah.
that shows you the references halachically, where to look halachically. Mem,
Can I ask a question,
yeah, sure.
Lionel? So does it mean that there is no size now specified, as long as it, as a man and his body and his head and his table can fit in a sukkah?
No, so the Shulchan Aruch, and I'm not sure where that's based on. It might be that later on in the Gemara it actually gives it. But the Shulchan Aruch says that is 7 tefachim. A tefach is a hand's breadth. So
Okay.
seven tefachim by 7 tefachim. So 49 square hand breadths is the minimum. If it's smaller than that, actually, when I say 49 square hand breadths, I might be lying, because that would also include something like 5 by 10. I think it has to be a minimum of 7 each way.
Okay.
Rather than, so it's not just square millimeters that they're interested in. I think they're interested in each size, but we will come back to this later on. But I think Michael's quite right to point it out. The halacha seems to be like Beit
Shammai.
Whereas Beit Hillel would knock off a tefach because they don't include the table. So you can have a very narrow table for your food, which would be just 1 tefach, which would be 6 by 6. Right. Do you want to carry on into the next piece?
Yeah. So there's no commute for anyone, so why not?
Okay. Right, okay. Now, we're back in the Gemara. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph, from the bottom of 3a. Man Tana. Emma, are you still with us?
Yes.
Excellent. Fine. So now we're going to expand the discussion a little bit, and we're going to talk about buildings in general. What constitutes a building? So Man Tana, who is the sage, the rabbinic sage, the Mishnaic, Tanaitic sage, who holds laha, for this the Tanu Rabbanan, that the rabbis have learned. So we're going to quote a Braita, and we're going to try and analyze from the halachot in this Braita, who is the author of this anonymous Braita. Bayit she'ein bo arba amot al arba amot, a house which is smaller than 4 cubits by 4 cubits. Remember, cubit is from the tip of your middle finger to the elbow, approximately, I don't know, 18 inches, something like that. There are various halachic interpretations of what a cubit is. A house which is smaller than 4 by 4 cubits. Patur min mezuzah. You don't have to put a mezuzah on the door of that house. Or min hamarkeh, and from the markeh. Did anyone remember what a markeh is? I'm sure we had it in Kiddushin. Michael, tell them what a markeh is. You're muted. Hang on 1 second. Michael, now you're unmuted.
He's not.
You're still muted. Okay, a markeh
Mute himself.
He muted himself. A markeh is the parapet that you would put on a flat roof to stop you falling off. So,
I mean, I know that because that comes in the same parsha as not taking a mother bird's eggs, isn't it, or something like that? That you have to create a parapet around your roof.
Yeah, it's certainly in Kitzeitze. I don't
think
know
you say so.
where they're juxtapositioned. But if you have a house, so it's interesting. You have a house which is quite tall with a flat roof, but the house is less than 4 by 4. It's less than 6 feet by 6 feet. It's still possible to fall off it, but there is no obligation to make a parapet at the top of on the roof of that house, because it's not called a house. The Ein Matame B'Negaim, and it does not become impure with Negaim, the plague. So this is an interesting and quite unusual din. There is a spiritual plague called Sarat. Would affect people's skin. It's sometimes interpreted as leprosy, but it wasn't. Sometimes a psoriasis, but it wasn't either. So the interesting thing was that
it was COVID.
The interesting thing was that this could affect houses as well. And there was a din that if a house had this kind of infestation, that the Kohen could condemn it, and then the house would be pulled down. If the house was smaller than 4 amot, 4 cubits by 4 cubits, it doesn't matter if it had the infestation. It did not actually fulfill the criteria of being condemned. And it was not what's the right English? It is not included in the houses of a walled city. And we did this, I think, at the end of the first chapter in Kedushin. Michael, you might remember it.
Something to do with houses being returned inside a walled city at the Yovel, I think. Is it to do with the Yovel undoing any transactions in which houses are sold?
Right. So
I don't remember it specifically, but I do remember that apparently I do remember that on a Yovel, certain sales are automatically invalidated and returned to the original parties.
If you sell land, if you sell land to somebody, it's only sold on a lease of 50 years, or up to the Jubilee year. Then it will return to the original seller or to the heirs of the original seller. If you sold a house that was in a walled city, then there is a year's cooling off period where the seller is allowed to buy it back. But after that, there is no return of the house. So a house which is smaller than 4 by 4 does not come under the category of a house of a walled city. So all these dinim which apply to a house, this Brighter is telling us that for that to be a house, it needs to have a certain size. And that certain size is 4 cubits by 4 cubits. And the very famous scene when people would go out to battle, there were a few get out of battle cards, and one of them was if you had just built a new house, you were allowed to go back. That was it was a way of excusing yourself from military service. If the house that you built was less than 4 by 4, you couldn't get out of the military service. Vein Marvinbo, and you couldn't make an Erev with it. Vein Mishtatvinbo, and you wouldn't make an Erev for a Mavoi, for a cul-de-sac. We'll explain those more fully next time. Vein Menichibo Erev, you can't put the Erev in it. Vein Osinoto Ibo Vein Shnei Ayarot, and you don't make it into a connection, a mixing between two houses. Vein Achin Vashot Vin Cholkinbo. And the brothers, the heirs, or the partners can't divide it up. Seems like the house.
I think also you can't put a mezuzah in a room that is not of a certain size either.
That I didn't know. But
Yeah.
For
For example, a cupboard. If say a cupboard, you have a cupboard and it's got an entrance into it, and it's sizable, but not of the right size for a mezuzah. I can't remember what the size is, but you wouldn't put a mezuzah on that door.
It could be that if it's a cupboard, it's not really a room.
Even if there is a window there, apparently, it has to be of a certain size.
Okay, well, please God, I'll check that up before next week.
I
So
think that's actually very interesting, actually, Ruth. I think because, yeah, I mean that's very interesting because why would a room require a mezuzah if it was less than 4 amas by 4 amas, when a house itself wouldn't require one? You might think that was a kal v'chomer.
yeah, you might think that. So we've run out of time, so we're not going to be able to finish down the 2 dots. But you can see that the suggestion the Gemara is going to make is all these dinim seem to be the same as the din of Rebbe, because Rebbe is the one who holds that a sukkah has to be 4 by 4, and maybe there's some consistency here. If Rebbe is the anonymous author of this braita, that's his cutoff. For anything to be of a decent size, to be called a house or to be called a sukkah, it needs to be 4 by 4. So we'll go over that again next week. Please God, if everyone is willing to continue learning like this, we can tune in Monday evening at 8:45 next week, and we can carry on the sukkah.
Well done. We did a whole Omid today.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I have actually recorded it, so
Michael, what's the matter with you?
I'm actually a bit better now, to be honest with you. Thank you very much. I've got COVID.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. But I'm a bit better now. I tested positive a couple of days ago, and so I'm in bed at the moment, as you can probably tell. I've still got a bit of a cough, but I'm better than I've been for a number of days, and I think please God, I'm on the mend. So it's been a long struggle, I can tell you.
Sorry. How's she going?
I wish you all better and stay safe, stay isolated.
Yeah.
And
how's work, Lionel?
work is, as you can imagine, pretty hectic. My colleagues are all pretty much gone over to ITU now. There's not much anesthetic going on. Obviously, we have to look after labour ward and the emergencies. We are supporting the main ITU with 3 or 4 extra consultants a day and night. We've got about 6 or 7 ventilators to go before we've run out of ventilators.
Wow.
I'm so
The
sorry.
ITU is probably 2.5 times the size that it's designed for. The main theatres are now pretty much filled with COVID patients.
Yeah, that's what's happening at Watford where my brother is. So how many ITU beds have you got now then?
How many?
ITU beds.
Well, we're designed to go up to 30. If we get any more ventilators, we could probably go to 35. Obviously, staffing is an issue as well.
You must have more, Lionel. I would have thought that you turned all the theatre. Did you turn all the theatres into ITUs?
Well, we've got 3 patients in each theatre, and out of our 6 main theatres, 1 is being held for labour ward, obviously for obstetric emergencies. We have filled 4 out of the other 5.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow.
Well, apparently a neighbour of
25 patients hovering on the wards,
Good Lord.
deciding which way they're going to go.
A neighbour of mine was taken into ITU, and he was put on one of the new Dyson ventilators, and apparently he's picking up nicely.
Good.
Really, I didn't realise they got.
That was a joke, Michael?
It took a bit of time for the old penny to drop, though.
Well, that's good. You must be feeling better. That's a relief.
Good.
So, Michael, did you go into hospital then, Michael?
I did go in for a day, yes, to A&E, and they looked after me very well.
I wish you all well. The rabbi has put a lot of the shiurim that he's given over the last week and a half on the YouTube channel. If you look at Shomrei on YouTube.
Also on Zoom, no? It's also on Zoom, I think.
I'm not sure whether you can pick it back on Zoom. I don't know how you get it.
I see. You mean that what you've missed.
You can get it.